Can you hear me okay? Excellent. So, any of you don't know me or Sam, you're probably wondering why there's two companies here that have exactly the same name, one of which is now going to completely contradict the other one. So, just as kind of background, it's not some kind of weird, some family kind of thing that's going on here. I was the co-founder of Whitman Mead. I left a few years ago, and you'll probably find out why I left actually in this presentation. But it's yeah, so obviously I know Sam well and Berko and so on, and he's probably a bit of kind of like friendly joshing going on. But I was the co-founder of that company, and formed a new company now called Whitman Analytics. It's been going for a while, and I'll talk to you about I suppose the different take that we're taking on analytics. Now we work with different types of customers, the ones that Sam and the guys work with. We work with more kind of startups and I suppose a different type of customer, different type of use cases. But if you're kind of wondering why, bizarrely, the company's names are the same, it's I was the co-founder of that one. So it's a bit like Top Gear when all the good ones left and went to go and work for Amazon. I'm joking. Um, yeah, anyway, right. So my presentation is called WTF Just Happened in the BI Industry, and this came about because I was actually going to present this a while ago, and then I managed to actually get myself injured in a cycling accident. And so this actually was meant to be presented a few months ago when all the takeovers happened in the market, when Looker were taken over by Google and Tableau by Salesforce. I want to talk about why I think that's happening, and I suppose changes in the BI industry that have been happening in the last few years. So there's a lot of opinion here. Yeah, hopefully you'll find it interesting. So first of all, that's me. I always find it quite hard to do the intro slide at the start, so I copied my thing from Medium. Now I write on Medium. As I say, I founded two analytics companies now. I've got a podcast called Drill to Detail. Second podcast that's also on Spotify now, which is my dance music podcast, which has surprisingly not got quite the same sort of listenership. But it's my son is really embarrassed about it as well. But if you go on Spotify, you'll see two podcasts on there now. One is banging house tunes, and one is really kind of like in-depth technical things about BI. It's actually the same person. It's really bizarre. So it's actually me. Okay, and that's my company here. So Whitman Analytics, I remember that one there. Lewis from the company is with me here today at the moment. We're based up by the station at the Spaces space there. As you probably see, we've actually focused on almost anything apart from Oracle. And it's because I thought when I started a new company, it'd be interesting to do something different, really. Okay, but I also think there's some fundamental changes in the way that we deliver BI and analytics these days that makes me think that I'd rather do it this way now. Okay, but that's not knocking what Sam has said. Right. Okay. And what we do, very similar stuff to Sam, but we do it all with kind of like new technologies and new approaches. So we do kind of data engineering, data analytics, but we approach it in a different way, I think, really, to the way it's been done before. Okay, and last time I was here, actually, last time I presented at this data forum, was I was also the guy that was in the papers a few years ago who spent 11 hours trying to boil a Wi-Fi kettle. It was kind of 48 hours. It was the most kind of popular thing on the news at the time, and I did a presentation when I was here last. What I did was I scraped all of the comments from the Daily Mail and I put them all into kind of Google BigQuery and analysed them for sentiment and stuff, and I worked out who hated me most in the whole of kind of Britain, really. Look, because every person who comments on the Daily Mail puts their location. So I mapped it all on a map and worked out where the centre of hate was for kind of me and my Wi-Fi kettle at the time. So that was the last time I presented here. That was a funny one, but this is a bit more serious, really. And actually, we got a bigger audience than last time. So who here is who was there last time? Who's in that photo? One or two of you? So there we go. We had a much smaller audience last time. So that was when we held the event in the pub down the road, the Gloucester. Is it Gloucester? Is it called the craft beer pub now? Yeah. No, it was the what used to be called the Gloucester. I used to DJ in the Gloucester in 1990. So I was a student DJ then, actually, funny enough. So sorry. North Lane, yeah. So I used to DJ when it was called the Gloucester back in 1990. So blimey, that shows my age. Right, okay. So the progress of BI tools. Okay, so I want to kind of just talk through how I think there's been some evolutions in tooling and approaches to doing BI and analytics over the years. So, and I'm thinking more about, at this point, this talk is about more about the vendor consolidation. Okay, so if you sort of go back in time to when we had, standalone reporting tools. So anybody here remember tools like Cognos, and well, back in the days it was things like business objects at that point, or it was Crystal Reports. Anyone here use Crystal Reports? Okay, there we go. So back in the day, you used to get all these kind of standalone BI tools, Brio, and all those kind of things there, and they work well, but they only really served a kind of part of the job, really. And so what happened then was there was a kind of consolidation in the market at the time, and we went to these things called enterprise BI suites. So you had these standalone reporting tools, and then you had these big monolithic, enterprise BI suites like Cognos, like SAP kind of business objects, Oracle, and so on there. Okay. And I'll kind of go into why I think they were popular. I'll go into why I think they're just not so relevant these days, to be quite frank. Then we had the era of the kind of desktop data visualization tools, which was this was the kind of lunatics had taken over this island. This was when, instead of everything being governed and all this, it was, actually it's a bit like kind of Brexit. It was kind of all the nutters that kind of suddenly had all the access to all the budget and everything. And but it's where you've got, people buying Tableau, buying Click and all this, and joking apart, it liberated all of this from the clutches of IT. It meant people could focus on answering questions. What you lost was governance, and you lost kind of like, the control of the IT department. But it meant that, you could now, you could put analytics and data visualization into people's hands. And it wasn't all about, having to wait in line to get IT to kind of build you a report or a repository or whatever in an enterprise BI tool. And then, where we've got to now, the latest phase of it really is kind of what I might call the kind of modular modern BI stack. Okay. So we've been through these kind of evolution really of these ways to build and sell BI tools over the last kind of 20 years. And the way it kind of worked was that you had your standalone BI tools there. And in fact, what happened there was they were all bought by the big vendors. So Oracle went out and bought Hyperion, they bought Brio, they bought all those ones there. SAP bought Business Objects. And really it was who had the biggest balls at that point. Really, it was, there was a lot of kind of consolidation going on. There was a lot of buying up these products, and there was a lot of work went on to try and integrate these together. But it consolidated into this world of kind of enterprise BI tools. And so Cognos, Hyperion, all these ones there. Okay. So then, as I said earlier on, you've got the enterprise BI suites. Now, this is actually a slide deck I used at one point at the time, actually. The point I was making here, really, and this was actually, to be fair to my old world, really, this was, as Sam said earlier on, there was a time when everything to do with Oracle BI was very kind of monolithic, very big, and so on. And vendors like Oracle, for example, they tried to then tried to release these kind of, I suppose, competitors to Tableau and so on, and this sort of thing. But in general, these big enterprise monolithic BI suites were replaced by the world of all these kind of like data visualization tools. But I say what you lost then really was you lost, there was no more a concept of a kind of metadata layer. There was no governance. There was no, I suppose, trying to create a single view over all your data. There was no kind of like work around things like trying to create a single version of truth and so on there. Okay. And so really, when these tools, were popular, that was kind of good. They didn't buy Oracle, but they obviously took over a lot of the market share. But then, they had their own issues really as well. And wait for it. There you go. Took me ages to find that. I spent about half my presentation time trying to find a picture of that. So, the thing about tools like Tableau and so on is, beyond a certain point, the air goes out of the thing. Really, you start to find that everybody's got their own version of truth. You've got everybody trying to kind of load data into caches. It doesn't really, though, at that point, it didn't really kind of work in that way. And what you needed was a bit more of a kind of, was in a way some of the best things about enterprise. The way that things were integrated, the way that you kind of took a bigger picture view of what you're trying to do, but without the kind of the monolithicness, without the kind of the actually dealing with kind of Oracle salespeople and so on that you have to do when you're working with that kind of that kind of I suppose, enterprise BI world. So you ended up then. This is the kind of way that this is the kind of architecture that I typically use now on projects, and I find that the kind of customers we work with, the startups, the kind of data driven sort of like product companies in London, all this kind of stuff. It's what we call the kind of modern modular BI stack. Okay. So does anybody here use a tool, use DBT? Who uses DBT? So you use it. Anybody here use Looker at all? Or things like Stitch, Snowflake? Yeah, so a few of you. Okay. And so, this is typically how we build out kind of like analytics platforms these days. So there's a lot in there that actually is an echo of what we used to do before. So there's a thing we call ELT, so extract, load, and transform, which Berker and I remember back from the days of Oracle 8i and 9i, when that was introduced, the idea that you would land data into a data warehouse and then transform it. The modular bit, well, in the end, all the BI suites, like from Oracle, for example, are just products linked together. But the idea with this is, as your kind of system scales up and as your needs grow and so on, it's much easier to swap these out for different vendors' products. So you might use, for example, Google BigQuery today for something. You might use Snowflake tomorrow. It's this idea of best of breed, but it's kind of linked together with APIs and so on there, really. Okay. And so this is typically kind of how we do things today. Work with tools like Looker, Mode, all these kind of things. Really. I think probably Brandwatch, I know you're a Looker user here as well, so probably this is a familiar way of doing it. So this was an approach that's kind of in the ascendancy. Okay. And what you then find is there's a whole bunch of vendors in this space that are kind of like have risen up in the last few years. So these are all ones that I work with. So things like, for the databases, data warehouses, you've got one thing actually I never realized when I worked in the Oracle world was how big a deal Amazon Redshift is. We were never really aware of it as a kind of like a serious data warehouse platform back in those days. But Amazon Redshift is like the Microsoft Access of its day really now. It's so prevalent really in use, and the first database platform you ever kind of support really if you're building out a new tool in this area is Redshift really. So things like Redshift and BigQuery, things like that, Postgres of all things has become, it's a bit like Linux in a way. Nobody thought that Linux 20 years ago would be actually probably the most popular kind of operating system even used by Microsoft. But now Postgres is, or Postgres kind of architecture and language and so on is so kind of prevalent in this world. Things like event collection services, Snowplow, Mixpanel, Heap, Segment, we're partnered with Segment, various tools here, okay, and including this thing called DBT that we use, which is this kind of data transformation framework that's all kind of command line, the idea that engineering analytics is an engineering approach and so on there. Anyway, this isn't really about this though. And a whole bunch of new consultancies, one of which is mine. Okay, so moving on. So then this just happened. So something happened a while ago that was interesting. It was Google saying they're going to acquire Looker, which I'd kind of banked on a little bit because I in terms of starting my new consultancy, I was hoping that Looker, well, I got two bets really. One is that Looker gets bought by Google and that Snowflake gets bought by somebody, okay, because I think that'll get bought at some point because people always want to, in terms of if you want to sell a company, you never kind of like a higher value than when you're suddenly the consultancy that does work in an area that's been bought by a big company. Anyway, so Google acquiring Looker. So what is going on here? First of all, what is the logic of that? Why would Google want to do this? And what potentially are they planning to do with this? Because there was always a bit of a link between Google Cloud and Looker. Typically a Looker project will be built on, say, BigQuery. Certainly is a lot of Google Cloud Platform deployments, but Google were acquiring Looker. So that's the first sort of thing that was interesting. And then the second thing was Salesforce buying Tableau. So, that was probably, that's a surprise for you guys when that happened. But Salesforce buying Tableau, and for a lot of money as well. Serious money. So why was that? Why would Salesforce want to buy Tableau, and why would Tableau want to sell out to Salesforce? That's kind of interesting. And then, and actually before those two things happened, another one example was Stitch. Anyone here use Stitch at all to do their kind of, so Stitch is fantastic. So Stitch was one of the companies that span out of RJ Metrics a few couple of years ago. The other one was Fishtown Analytics, who we partner with, and they built sort of DBT. Stitch is a fantastic single-purpose service for just taking data from, say, I don't know, Google Ads, or from from whatever different sources. Could be kind of HubSpot, it could be Xero or whatever, and then landing that in a data warehouse, and you then transform it using SQL, using DBT or whatever, into the kind of like the integrated data set you want to work with. So Stitch was bought by Talend, who Talend were a kind of more like an enterprise ETL vendor. So again, yeah, what's going on here? Why would these acquisitions happen? And I sort of know some of the people involved in this, but I've not. Certainly, the one about Google is speculation on my part, but I think I've got a pretty good idea on that. So why is this happening, and what does this mean for the industry? Okay. So there's a list here. There's other ones happened. So you've had Periscope bought by Sisense. You've got Illuma as well. So Illuma were also built by Google. So Illuma is more like a data transformation, kind of more like an old schooly kind of ETL sort of tool, really. So all these things happened. A lot of money there, really. So whatever is happening. Okay. So my thoughts on this. So first of all, the gravitational pull of enterprise. Okay. So I did a podcast episode with a guy, Tristan Handy from Fishtown Analytics, a little while ago, and he said actually about this kind of thing happening, about all these products being bought, and he said to me, what you've got to realize is that when enterprise customers come to you, they'll say to you, we want you to put this feature into the product. We want you to add SSO integration. I want you to add, I don't know, on-premises installs or whatever. And they won't pay 10x they'll pay 100x. So they'll pay you 100 times what normal customers will pay for this. And so, enterprise customers and selling into enterprise accounts is a really hard thing to resist. Okay. And so taking what this means in practice, for example, Mode Analytics, now another company in this space, they went from fairly cheap sort of affordable pricing to the dreaded thing, which is the pricing isn't on the website. You have to negotiate with a salesman. Okay, Fivetran as well. So anyone who use Fivetran? Fivetran's really, really good, but they really upped the price recently. So it went from being affordable. Right, it's always affordable compared to other tools, but certainly Fivetran is very clearly focusing on the mid-market and enterprise accounts now. Looker, their pricing has been gradually been creeping upwards. Stitch had a business around enterprise as well. So it's there is always an interest in. There's a great temptation to focus your features on enterprise, and once you start doing that, then enterprise businesses will want to buy you to add to their kind of product set. So just as just as Looker were moving into the enterprise market, it's not surprising that really Looker has more value to Google in terms of trying to help them close deals than Looker would have on its own, because it's the front end, it's the visualization, it's the BI part of a kind of a solution. All the clever stuff you do in the background with all the data management and so on, what they're focused on is the front end. And so Looker being owned by Google and being part of every deal that Google does, it's got far more value to Google than it has probably on its own. And so that's why they sort of did that. But in general as well, it's as much as I'm kind of mocking a little bit the kind of monolithic enterprise suites of BI tools. The reason they're big and the reason they're clunky and the reason they're expensive is because actually solving problems for enterprises is a complex and expensive business. And you can't just you can't just have a simple tool with no SSO integration and so on and call that enterprise. And so, part of what's happening here is these tools like Looker and so on, they've adopted more enterprise features because you have to, because beyond solving the simple problems, it gets complicated. And so there's a kind of gravitational pull of enterprise there, I think. And so that's a big part of it, really. But people do not, but people, customers, although they recognize the value of tools like things that Sam was talking about, enterprise Oracle and so on, they don't want to have to deal with Oracle salespeople or enterprise salespeople and so on. And so as much as, although Sam is saying there that he thinks it's kind of like, I love the bit with the Alan Partridge book there, on the way back and so on. But I wonder really whether the latest generation of of buyers of enterprise tools will ever want to deal with people like Oracle and the way that Oracle sell. And it's not just Oracle; it's any of the big vendors really. Whereas people are used to now being, you buy a tool like it's much easier to deal with Looker, for example, and with Mode and so on than with Oracle, really. And it comes with a lot of baggage. And so, I'd say that um, the need for enterprise is there, but I would say that people don't necessarily want to go back to the old vendors to solve those problems. That's on my wall at home, that picture there. So, but the other thing is, the vendors like Google, they need you to do something because Google Data Studio, who uses that? Probably quite a few of you use. Yeah, so it's a bit of it's good, but it's a bit of a kind of comedy BI tool in some respects. It's not. It's as it's okay, but I don't think it's really going to be the solution that's going to have legs for Google really. And I think, as you'll see in a moment, it's why I think Google bought Looker, and I'll explain why in a moment. This is kind of good, and we're using it in projects currently now for customers, but it's not a full BI tool really, not a full kind of like solution. So the next thing really is Google Cloud Platform, I think becoming a more kind of serious contender, right? And so really, and this comes down to something else that happened recently, which was who's here? Who's apart from Sam and Burka? Who's heard of Thomas Kurian? Right. Okay. So Thomas Kurian is previously known as, I'll show you. So this is Thomas Kurian. Okay, he used to be the head of, well, basically the head of engineering, the head of development, head of product, really, at Oracle. So I mean, the guy is fantastic. I mean, he's the sort of person that knows the kind of most details of a kind of like an API or something, but then can just come up with strategy and so on. He's like almost not human really in terms of his ability to kind of comprehend the macro and the micro. So he was at Oracle. There he's talking here about sort of, he was very much a backer of the value of data and analytics in kind of like enterprise solutions. Okay, so he was at Oracle. This is him speaking here as well. So you can see lots of stuff about analytics and so on. And then he fell out with Larry Ellison and rocked up at Google. Okay. And so he's doing a sort of kung fu move there or something. But he's now unbuttoned the shirt a little bit. So he's kind of really chilled out compared to that is kind of like, he's just basically almost like horizontal in terms of cool, But he's rocked up at Google. Okay. Now this is kind of interesting because he's not going to go to Google and just kind of retire. If he's going to go to Google, he's going to go there to do something serious. Really, he's not the sort of person to move somewhere and just kind of, I don't know, look out the window all day sort of thing. And so this is kind of Google's latest one of the latest kind of architecture diagrams, product diagrams they've got there, talking about how in Google Cloud they intend to, leverage, as people say, data analytics and all this kind of stuff. And you know what? This is kind of standard stuff. You've got BigQuery in there. You've got, AI and all that. But this isn't a million miles away from the sort of things that you used to talk about before Oracle. And clearly, he's going to be, to my mind, executing on a very similar kind of playbook, really, at Google. Now, it won't be exactly the same because Google and Oracle aren't the same sort of companies, but he obviously values analytics, and he obviously values the importance, sees the importance of a decent kind of set of tooling for analytics and all this kind of stuff. And so this was him here at Oracle. Now, a bit of history here, actually. So this is my old weblog. This is from 2006. Okay, so it took me a long time to try and find this article and not do a screenshot from your blog, actually, my old blog. So this is one that actually kind of like, predated. You can see it's actually done in in fact that's the old Oracle ADF look and feel. That was done in kind of like movable type back in the day, back in then. And back in 2006, Oracle bought a product called Siebel Analytics. Okay, and at the time I was tipped off to say, someone said to me, this is quite a significant acquisition by Oracle, because they basically they already had a product called Discoverer they used at the time, which is sort of analogous to Google Data Studio now. So they had a product that's very popular called Discoverer, but they kind of de-emphasized that, bought this thing called Siebel Analytics, and then used that to build an analytics platform in the future. Okay, and what they really focused on at the time was these kind of analytic applications. So this is Siebel Analytics. This has gone over various iterations, has become what's called the BI applications at Oracle. But the idea with this is that it's all well and good giving people a toolkit. If you just give them Looker or you give them Google Data Studio and say, off you go then, you work out something, there's not so much value in that. What people want is they want content as well. And so this was the old playbook from when he was at Oracle. And if you look at what Google are saying they're going to do with Looker now and this space, it's around applications. Okay, and so now the applications you currently can run in kind of Looker are a bit of a joke, really, compared to what you get, say, in kind of Oracle and so on. But they're getting there, and clearly, if you look now at this is their sales analytics one now that's in Looker, it's starting to get there, really. And so, to my opinion, the reason that Google bought Looker was Thomas Kurian, really, and because they want to invest in analytics as a platform. Looker's play now is around a data platform. The idea is it's not just a BI tool. You can actually kind of host applications and APIs and so on within, and pipelines and so on within their platform. And that's a lot of what we do with our customers in London at the moment. And so, this is why I think Google went out and bought Looker, really, because it's the same story as it happened before with Siebel, and it's about Thomas Kurian, and it's about data analytics in the platform. Right, and the last bit is Salesforce. So what about Salesforce? What was the story behind Salesforce? Now, this is one I hope you don't quote me on because it's pretty libelous sort of thing. But it's, Salesforce, they bought Tableau. And I think this is about Salesforce giving up with Wave and every other attempt they've had to try and do BI tools. And I also think it's Tableau selling out as well. I think compared to the story around Looker and Google Cloud, which I think is a kind of like a positive story. It's like we want to basically go further where we are now. We've got a kind of vision, we've got a roadmap and so on. My view on Tableau is being bought by Salesforce is where's the value for the customers in that, really. And I do work with Salesforce. I'm not really good at kind of. I just think this is all about basically buying customers. So I think that Salesforce probably wanted to buy Looker, maybe it's one of those things they were doing, or certainly they had money knocking around. I think they also, is there any use Salesforce in the analytics like Wave or BeyondCore or anything at all? Yeah, so BeyondCore is fantastic, actually. It's a really good product. But in general, to my way, the market has felt that even more so than Oracle, really. I think Salesforce really didn't really get anywhere with their analytics products. Oracle had a good product and they built on it. I think Salesforce with their kind of analytics kind of tools never really kind of got anywhere. And I think the acquisition of Tableau is as much them saying, we just kind of, in a way, we just got it wrong before, we're going to buy it and buy something now. But it makes no sense. Salesforce is all about everything is in the cloud. There's no more software, it's just services. And Tableau, most people run it on the desktop, really. There's no logic to it at all, really. There's no particular integration in my mind between Salesforce and Tableau and so on, no more so than any other tool, really. And so, to my mind, the Salesforce deal was all about basically, Salesforce deciding they'd kind of, it wasn't going to work with what they had before. And I think it's about Tableau thinking, here's someone coming along with some money, let's cash out at this point, really. It was a bit of a kind of direction, a strategy they had. I think Tableau, it's an okay product. I think I think the way in which you develop stuff with it is archaic now. I think the way we develop things now is a software development process with things like DBT and whatever is much more kind of like of today. I suspect that Tableau's owners thought, right, here's someone with some money, let's kind of sell to them. Tableau are going out and buying some customers and buying a product that finally does have some kind of like traction. But I don't think the customers are going to benefit out of it, really. And I don't think there's any kind of particular benefit to Salesforce customers. So I've got a whole list of these kind of like, quotes really on there. But there's a good one here that came from somebody, which was, this is also an implicit admission that Salesforce's analytics Waves was a flop, really. And so I think there's two different stories here, really. I think there's, Looker being bought by Google, good luck to them. I think there's a bit of a kind of mission there. This is about just cashing out. I think the other thing really is, this is a little bit of playback to, I suppose, what Sam said earlier on about, talk about Oracle, but in the end, you do start to need these enterprise features really, and you do start to need to get more complex and more capable BI tools. But I don't necessarily think people will go back to those big old vendors to do that really. I think that day's gone really. And that's why I think, it's an interesting world to be in for our area. Right. Please don't quote me on that stuff there, really. So there's actually a podcast we recorded, an episode with Tristan Handy, myself, and a guy called Stuart Bryson, and we talk about this as well, actually. So a lot more thinking around this really as well. But that's my kind of take on where the market's going now. Any comments or questions? Who agrees? Who disagrees? Anybody at all?
Thank you very much for that, Mark. Let me pass the microphone to you so that your question and the response can be recorded. Ed, I'll start with you.
Okay, so we actually got Fivetran, BigQuery, and Looker as a package deal at a joint event about a year and a half ago.
Oh, right, okay.
Do you think that the acquisition means that the modular approach is going to start to end? So it will become more and more the case that functionality in Looker will be dependent on using BigQuery as a kind of data platform and maybe Illuma as a like ELT tool? Or do you think that's not the case at all, and Redshift, Snowflake, whatever else will continue to be supported?
I think the obvious thing to think is what you're saying, that and I think certainly if you think about an analytics sales deal at the moment, you've got Google walk in there and they're trying to sell Google Cloud Platform to a company that currently uses kind of, I suppose, more on-premises technology. They can only capture a small part of the deal at the moment. They can only get the infrastructure, whereas if they have Looker as well, they can capture the analytics part of it. With Illuma, they can capture that part as well. But I don't think in any way right. So that certainly there will be, if you have a Looker salesperson come to you, or a Google one, they're going to try and sell you the other part of the thing, obviously, But I think that the thing about then optimizing for a particular platform. So what do Looker product development do? And actually, we've had this story before with the Oracle world when Oracle bought Siebel Analytics. It would have been, there was always, we heard all the debate internally about, do we kind of put features into OBI, as it was then, that are specific and only there for Oracle database? And actually, over the kind of all the years that I worked with it, I think we maybe saw one or two features, and that was about it. And they were often quite poorly implemented. There wasn't really much effort into it. And I think, if I was Looker, I would be very wary of doing anything that's going to lose you the Snowflake customers, because that's a massive market, probably more bigger than the market of BigQuery customers. So I think that there is certainly in selling, they will try and sell you the whole bit now, rather than just trying to sell you, the Looker or whatever. But I don't believe that the products themselves or the product teams themselves will have any real incentive to focus on just that one kind of like platform. Even remember the days of Oracle data mining and stuff like that, and there was always talk about having special support for that in OBI. It never happened really. So I think that modular will still be there, and I think actually it's much easier to connect these things now as well. Back in those days, it was such a pain to try and connect anything, but now, so the answer, very short answer to that is, I think that there'll be sales will want to, product won't want to. That's my thoughts anyway. And actually, very clearly, they'll be making a big deal out of saying it's multi-cloud at the moment, really. But that's what products say. But the salespeople will want to sell you the whole solution. Yeah. And actually, interestingly, Fivetran. I mean, in terms of the next shoes to drop, I think Fivetran, Snowflake are obvious ones, really. Just recently, yeah, exactly. So Snowflake are looking to do an IPO, and Fivetran's interesting though. Yeah, but Stitch was sold to Talend as well. But yeah, so I don't think it will go back to how it was before, really. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, front or the back. Yeah, front first of all. Yeah.
That was really interesting talk. What do you think it means for the future of Google Data Studio?
Right. Okay. So Google Data Studio, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it's a kind of free reporting tool that comes with. It was part of It was part of G Suite, wasn't it? But it's been separated out now. I think. Well, again, looking back at history, so in our Oracle days, there was a tool called Discoverer, and that even today that is still around, isn't it? I think because there are people that want that as a use case. In fact, I had one of my customers today said to me, "What do I think of this?" And I said, "Well, if you're trying to report off of, say, DoubleClick or Google Ads or whatever, and there's an integration there already, and it does what you want, go for it. It's good." I think that Google themselves will certainly they'll never recommend that rather than Looker, really. So, but I think the other thing to bear in mind is that that Google, like say Oracle or whatever, it's a set of businesses. So you've got the marketing side of Google, you've got kind of Google Cloud Platform, and certainly Google Marketing. So the same ones that kind of obviously sell things like Google Optimize and all that kind of stuff. They obviously will still be focusing on Data Studio as well. So I would say Data Studio will. Right, probably the official line at some point will be, it will be going on, but we will not be investing much more in it really. And the strategic solution is Looker, but it is different markets though slightly. It's marketing versus kind of Google Cloud. That's my take anyway. But I think it will still be here in 5 years' time. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very new to the industry. Been in here for a year from academia, and we use Data Studio a lot, and we're going to use Tableau for some stuff. So I'm interested in why you think Tableau is archaic in some ways. Is it the way you join the data and do the transformations underlying it?
It's three things on it. So first of all, I think four things actually. So first of all, it's products. It's very hard for them to escape their roots, and it was a desktop tool. And I think that as much as you can build things in the cloud, people don't do that, and so it'll always have a center of gravity, which is kind of desktop, and that isn't the way things are going. But I think also the process by which you develop analytics and the way you do things. Okay, so to my mind, one of the problems with the way people do analytics in the past is that it's not repeatable. You go in there and you find something of interest in the dashboard and you do some analysis, and it's but you can't, what's your working, what's your kind of repeatability on that, and how do you scale that as an approach? And there's no things like version control, and it just is an old way of doing things. And the way that, if you work in a tech startup in London and you're building a kind of a front end and so on, you build things in a different way these days. You build it, with a software development process, and you have release management, and you have sort of like CI/CD pipelines and so on. And these are things that you get with the new tools that are even just data visualization ones that you just can't really retrofit those to Tableau, where you basically do version control by adding a number to the end of a file name and all this kind of stuff. The other thing is, as we move to bigger data sets and as we move to cloud hosted sort of databases, they just aren't really aligned with how tools like Tableau work, where you have this mid-tier cache. Before I started this second consultancy, I worked as a product manager in a company that was working with Google BigQuery on a petabyte scale, and they originally were using Tableau on top of that, but it just didn't work with BigQuery because you couldn't cache all of that inside a mid-tier cache. So it's a whole bunch of things where I think it doesn't align with how people do development these days. It doesn't align with the way that the industry's going in terms of kind of like cloud versus whatever, and it's also not in alignment with the way that kind of like the data layer works now in products really. So it's good, but another problem with it, the fourth one, sorry, was you just end up with everyone with a slightly different slice, a slightly different take on what reality is. So the problem that Looker solved was it solved the problem of single version of the truth for people who didn't want to be told to go and build a metadata layer in a tool like Oracle BI. So it was a very lightweight way of adding a single version of the truth metadata layer over the whole enterprise, the whole business's kind of data. And the problem you get with Tableau, the problem you get with Click, with Superset, all these ones, is that there's no way of creating a single definition of what a metric is. And that to me is where Tableau tends to go a bit crazy, because there's no way of stopping that profusion of takes on what reality is really. So that's my 4 reasons why I think that it's less used these days. Any other comments or questions? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. One final quick one.
Yeah.
Sorry, you've not mentioned Power BI and the Microsoft stack. I know what you're saying about Tableau, Click, etc. being they're in-memory system, desktop systems. I understand, you know, that there's multiple versions of the truth when you do that, and that's why we don't like them. Fair enough. But obviously, with something like the Microsoft stack, they've got analysis services, which is their version, or so they would say, of Snowflake, etc. And so they've got the desktop version, Power BI, but also you can push that onto the back end into analysis services where you do have a one-stop kind of version of the truth. Do you see the Microsoft stack is up there? And obviously the only reason that no one bought it is because you can't buy Microsoft.
Well, funny enough, one of our biggest customers is Into down the road, actually, in Gloucester Place, Gloucester thing there, and they're wall to wall Microsoft there, and so we use Power BI there, and so it is analysis services, it's SQL Server, it's all that stuff, but also things like Segment and Snowflake and so on. And Power BI is good. I mean, I think if you're part of that world, a bit like with Oracle, the reason that Sam will keep on selling stuff and my whole company will keep on doing well is that, you know, you've invested in an ecosystem and you've invested in, you know, you're not just solving BI, you're solving a whole range of enterprise problems, of which BI is one of those. And that's why I think, you know, that's one of the strengths of Oracle Analytics. And with kind of people who bought into sort of .NET and Azure and all that, and this is not a derogatory thing. It's genuinely the sum is greater than the parts. You know, Power BI fits into that really well, really. So I think on a technical level, I mean, I'm not an expert in Power BI, but certainly it's as good as any. And I've seen some fantastic things with it. Connecting it to, say, sort of like you know, analysis services, all good and all that. But I think it's only really a relevant thing if, first of all, obviously there's a free version of Power BI, and but you know, to go beyond that, it's because you've invested in the whole kind of Azure thing and so on there. And you know, the customer I work with, they love it. They swear by it, really. And you know, we wouldn't even get a chance to recommend things like Looker in there because Power BI solves the problem for them in a really good way. But it's, you know, but it's you know, it has a dependency on Windows. It's very much, you wouldn't really get into it unless you were doing things like Azure. But if you do, it's fantastic. You know? So I'd say definitely it's. I don't use it myself much. My customers do, and they rate it.
Well, excellent. I think we will now thank Mark for his talk and for sharing his insights into the business intelligence industry from his great advantage point of experience and having been there. So yeah, give him a good round of applause.